Whoa, 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 before you hit that dislike button, just listen. Bob's Burgers is one of my favourite animated TV shows. It's actually so good that there are only 3 episodes, all from the first 2 seasons, that I think are bad enough to make a video out of. In terms of quality consistency, this show and Archer are probably the most consistent shows that I watch. But I still thought it would be good to say my thoughts on my least favourite episodes. None of these episodes are completely 100% bad, they just have or do things that I don't like. Why are you always so negative? Sorry everybody, that's my rabbit, PJ. Answer the question. Well, firstly because I'm cynical, but also because I think it's important to mention the things that are bad about shows and even ones that I like, so that way the team knows what at least one member of the audience is thinking. You know they don't watch your channel, right? And even if they did, they wouldn't listen to you of all people. Okay, now you're the one being negative. No, I'm not, it's just... Anyway, I picked these 3 episodes out for 3 completely different reasons, and while I could rank them from best to worst or worst to best, I won't be doing that in this video. I decided to make this video to say why I think each episode fails in their own right. They will be listed in the order they were released in. First off, this episode is here because when watching it just doesn't feel like they knew what they wanted from the show. Sure, it has the basics, like a rough idea of the characters, the setting, and some jokes, like the burger of the day. The tone of the show just feels off. Let me just say, I believe you can joke about pretty much anything, but the child molester joke and the autism joke just felt out of place for this universe.
It just involves me cleaning up toothpicks.
100?
Bob.
No.
100?
It's 3.
There's 3.
Okay, how many now?
Bob.
3.
No.
Ugh, you're the worst kind of autistic.
You can't even count.
Because he's not going to molest you.
Why?
Because you're heavy. Bob. Yeah, hold on.
Heavy kids can get molested.
Yeah, who wouldn't want to molest us fat?
That's enough.
The flaws with those jokes actually explain my thoughts on the episode as a whole pretty well. Out of place. The first joke doesn't work because they make Tina either too awkward or too dumb, and the second joke doesn't work because the universe is so light-hearted. Every character sounds and acts too awkward and strange around each other, and aren't likeable despite pretty much every character other than Hugo being likeable in pretty much every other episode. I know people are often put off by the show's art style, and I wholeheartedly disagree. For the HD seasons. For the first season and episode 1, I find the animation fairly hard to watch. So ultimately, what is the reason for me disliking this episode? To put it simply, it just feels like a completely different show with a different tone. But I can't be too mean to this episode, as this is the first episode and they were still figuring out the characters, and most pilots have similar issues. So while I do dislike this episode, I definitely understand why it ended up this way. Sexy dance fighting is here because I find it boring. The same can somewhat be said for sexy dance healing, but with that being from a much more recent season, the writers clearly knew all of the characters better. Bob's Burgers is probably, no, not even probably, Bob's Burgers is the best animated TV show for guest characters that appear in only 1 or 2 episodes, in my opinion. So what the heck happened with Gyro? I didn't know who the voice of Gyro was until I decided to make this video, and it's John Glaser. I really like John Glaser in Parks and Rec, and I think he's very funny in that. I just think his character in this is pretty weak. Out of all of the characters they could have brought back, they decided to bring him back. I think what caused this episode to be especially boring for me is that Tina is an awkward character, and I don't think that mixed with a relatively plain and calm character such as Gyro works well for a full episode. I might not be the biggest Tina fan as she barely gets any laughs out of me, but she is a good character and works well around more energetic characters. It being boring is honestly my main flaw, and with it being in the first season it means characters are extra awkward too. But once again, this is season 1, so I understand why this happened, just please don't have Gyro return for a big role again. Again. This episode is the hardest to understand mess-up-wise, in my opinion. While season 2 wasn't perfect, I mean I wasn't a big fan of Moody Foodie, but I didn't dislike it either, I think for the most part this season improved upon a lot of the issues I had with season 1. I love Ken Jeong and therefore Dr. Yap as a character since he basically plays a similar character in most things.
Again. You're weak!
I love Megan Mullally and Gail as a character, and I love Bob and Linda. This episode is fairly funny, it's got a great setting and cast. So what is it that you don't like? Shoot, PJ, shoot! To put it simply, it's my second favourite character in the series, Linda. And, to a certain extent, Gale. Gale wants Bob, basically because he's Linda's husband, and also partly due to a little mistake after Bob was drugged in the dentist.
Your tongue feels so much different than my cat's. I guess we could go around the block one more time.
Linda says go along with Gale's crush, blah de blah de blah. Gale starts groping him, blah de blah de blah. She makes him move his hand somewhere, and then Linda yells at Bob. And then Bob gets his tooth yanked out without anything to ease the pain because Dr. Yap likes Gale. Even though he was drugged and he thought it was Linda, Bob kissing Gale was bad. But I think the episode took his punishment way too far. Plus, after the kiss, Gale instantly started doing stuff with him off screen, while he was clearly drugged up. So to summarise my problems with this one, I'll make a list. 1. Bob kisses Gale while drugged. This shouldn't even be a plot. 2. Linda is a dick and barely listens to Bob. 3. Linda sides with her sister, whom is always horrible to her. 4. Bob gets sexually assaulted. 5. Bob gets his tooth yanked out as unnecessary further punishment. This might work in a show like Family Guy or Archer where all of the characters are unlikable people, but it feels so out of place for Bob's Burgers. I'd say Gale is out of character, but I'm not too sure that she is. Linda definitely is, however, as I find it hard to believe that she'd let her sister go that far, even though she always lets her get away with stuff. I feel like this episode might have worked better if Linda listened to Bob a bit more throughout, and if Bob only went to kiss Gale at the beginning instead of actually doing it. Even though Gale was in character, I feel like they should have toned her down for this, as I think they took her actions too far. If it was just Gale trying to win Bob over Linda because he's her husband, then I think it would have been a really good episode. It's a shame I don't like the plot and Linda, because Gale and Dr. Yap both get some really funny moments in this, and I actually like Gale's song.
One way or another, I'm gonna see ya. I'm gonna meet ya, Bob. I'll meet ya one day. Maybe next week, Bob. I'm gonna meet ya. I'm gonna meet ya. I'll meet ya.
With all that being said, those are the episodes I consider to be the worst of Bob's Burgers, and honestly, 3 episodes I consider bad isn't that bad in the grand scheme of things, especially since these episodes are from the first 2 seasons, and the show was still learning its characters at that point. Most of Season 1 and a bit of Season 2 of Bob's contain most of the weaker episodes of the show, but it has learned over time, and has become one of my favourite animated TV shows of all time. As long as the newer episodes are as consistently amazing as they have been for years now, then I'll honestly continue to be very happy with the quality of this show. Also, I think it's important to remember how much time and effort the people behind this show put into it, and I'd just like to say, I appreciate how much care they put into this well-crafted show. And guys, if you liked these episodes, then that's fine, this is just my opinion. If you guys have any episodes that you think are bad or have a list, then be sure to tell me in the comments, I always enjoy reading them. Until next time guys, bye I guess.